This is Mixlot Production.
Hello, good afternoon, viewers, and welcome to the program once again, Money Talk. Money Talk is a program that explores the activities of the economy, being it fiscal, being it monetary and trade. We look at banking and non-banking activities and how they contribute their quota to the development of Nigeria's economy and at best the GDP of the country. You are welcome to the program again. My name is Gabriel Coleman, the host on this program. Last week we discussed the Nigerian capital market and how the election shaped the capital market and the outcomes from the elections. And this week we are going to tilt towards trade and investment, and we'll be looking at the weight and measures. What contributions do they make to the growth of Nigeria's economy? What are their challenges and difficulties they encounter in carrying out their business? What is the scope of their functionality and activities? And we'll be looking at a whole lot of this. And you know that weight and measures, ensure the uniformity of equipment all over the country. And we have in the studio the director in charge of weight and measures, Engineer Mohammed Sada Sidi. You're welcome to the program Money Talk again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's start from there. Now, what are your functions? What is an overview of what you do in the Nigeria's economy?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Like the presenter said, my name is Engineer Mohammed Sada Sidi, in charge of Weight and Measures Department in Nigeria. Weight and Measures Department is an old establishment or an old established institution, although in a kind of not so elaborate in its functions. It was first established by our colonial masters before they left us and gave us independence. You can see it's as old as it is because of its importance they discovered. You may recall that during that time, our agricultural produce were the mainstay of the country, mainstay of the economy of the country, which is being sent to foreign countries for foreign exchange. And there used to be some conflicts in terms of weights and measures of the produce. And as they have that established structure in their country, they also help us to now build and establish it in our own country. And ever since then, at that time, they introduced it and place it under the supervision of the Nigerian police. But when the work of the Nigerian police becomes so enormous, they have to now shift it because of its relationship with trade and send it to Ministry of Trade. And it has been under Ministry of Trade all this while. Weight and measures, as the name implies, is also captured directly in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended in 1999. It is under the exclusive legislative list, item number 65, meaning to say it is only the federal government that has authority to adjudicate, control, regulate everything to do with weighing or measuring equipment used for trade in Nigeria. No other than that. We are working with the guidance of three major legal instruments. One is Weight and Measures Act, CAPW3 LFN, as amended 2004. The other is Pre-Shipment Inspection Act, which deals with pre-shipment inspections of our commodities going abroad, including oil and non-oil. Then the third one is the pre-packed, standardization of indigenous measures in the country. All this we are operating within the confine of the stipulation of this Weight and Measures Act.
Okay, now with these laws that are enabling you, to carry out your function.
Yes.
Being that they are well captured in the Constitution of Nigeria, and
Yes.
the legality is something nobody can question.
Yes.
What now is the scope? Does this include people who sell in the market, petrol stations, the oil companies? What is the scope of what?
Well, the scope is enormous. The scope is so wide in the sense that everything that is being traded, in terms of everything that involves trade, in terms of weight, in terms of measure, in volumes, in terms of number, the Weight and Measures have control over it. We have control over it through the instruments used to determine either the weight, the measure, or the number of item or commodity being transacted upon, where custody transfer now takes place. You understand? It now covers both oil and non-oil aspects of it, including we go to various places. In the past, or in fact, even in the present, we have a number of issues that relate to our capacity to really reach out to everywhere that we need to reach, to make sure that our aim is to make sure that everything that is sold for money, the quantity must be ensured.
Okay, now before we go deep into the challenges,
yes,
we have in Nigeria where people are making shortcuts, trying to make so much money, such that a bag of cement, which is supposed to be 50 kg,
yes,
sometimes it's rebagged.
Yes,
you get 44 or 45.
yes, yes.
Bags of rice, you have fertilizer, and then you have some of these equipment that, some of these trading materials that are in jerry cans,
yes,
that does not carry the full capacity.
Yes.
Does your work, entails that? And if it does, how regular do you ensure that these people, comply with the standard, that is set under your department?
Well, it has captured that under the clause of prepackage of goods. Every good that is sold pre-packed has to have identification of the content of that pack. If you are selling a cement, a bag, we have a standard. The regulation in the Weight and Measures Act provides for how are you going to sell that cement. It must come in 50 kg bags. It is regulated. You cannot sell cement in 40 kg bags. It's an offense. So that 50 kg bag, what we do from the source in the cement companies, we must make sure that the autofillers used to fill those bags automatically must be checked by Weight and Measures officer. Must be verified to ensure that yes, what it is dropping is actually the 50 kg. Now, we have our foot soldiers who now accompany these baggages up to the end user depot, to the dealers. Because this prepackaging, this adjustment usually takes place at the dealer level. When we ensure the accuracy of the pillars in the industries at the production stage, now we are not out of danger. We still have to make sure that those dealers receiving these goods, they sell them as they receive them from the factory. But in many a times, sometimes we find our people being what they are, they want to go for maximum profit, even when the profit is really enough. They will go for the packaging. Those are the people we trace in terms of cement, rice, and other. We even go up to the At times we go to the supermarkets to check some packets and all these things, because the regulation also covers them. The regulation covers even the units of weighment you are using to sell, because Section 48 of the Act gives the Honorable Minister the right or the power to make regulation as to what needs to be sold at when. You understand? So those are also covered under our scrutiny, the prepackaging of goods, how they are sold. And that's why we always advocate and call on people to really be very vigilant. When you observe something, because no one is an island, when you observe something while you are transacting with somebody and you are not comfortable, when it comes in terms of weights or measures, call the attention of this office, because we are everywhere in the country. At least we have presence in about 32 states in Nigeria, whereby you can now take your complaints to. They will go investigate and make sure that we address the issue.
Right,
yes.
Okay, now when you want to solve a problem, it says you begin to solve the problem from the root.
Yes.
You don't just begin to solve it from the branch or from this trunk or even from the leaf.
Yes.
The root cause. Now, talking about root cause, we're looking at the equipment set by industries or companies to ensure weight. Do you at any point in time, inspect these equipment before they are installed to ensure that this weight, and when you discover that they are short of what it should be, what do you do?
We do, because our law provides that for every equipment that is being brought into the country or manufactured or fabricated in the country must undergo what we call pattern evaluation processes, where we now look at that equipment. Is it really acceptable considering our own environment in terms of every parameter you want to look at? So when we are satisfied with that, there is a certificate we issue in respect of that equipment to certify that yes, it is fit to be used for trade. Now, having done that, even after that is before installation, before the actual usage of that equipment for trade, you have to have pattern approval certificate. Having gotten that, we also follow you with initial verification and subsequent periodic verification to ensure that the status of the equipment at the time of installation still remains the same. Otherwise, we reject it.
Now, when you discover in the process that you have certified the company at the time of installation, and you go back later on to discover that they have tampered with it, what do you do?
We immediately stop the usage. We reject it. There is a rejection notice we issue officially that this equipment with this model number and this make is henceforth rejected. If it is an equipment that can be rectified to come back to its initial status, we will insist on that before a new verification certificate is now issued. But where we find out that it is a continuous occurrences, deliberately, now we have to now go for prosecution. Already we have a legal department in the ministry that handle that. We prepare our report and take it to them to now pursue the prosecution processes and may most likely convict the offender.
Okay, now since you talk about prosecution, let's look deep into it. How many cases do you successfully prosecute in a year, and what has been the outcome?
Well, mostly in a year, because of the rigorous processes of legal processes, Some cases are still in court. Some have been decided. Some are appealed either by us or by the prosecuted parties. At least in a year we can go up to around 4 or 5 number of successful cases, because we ensure that we go to as long as it takes us to make sure that we do that. You see, the only problem that is really hindering our legal processes is the end result. The penalties as stipulated in the Act as at today is nothing to write home about. It's not commensurate with the present economic realities. This is what we have been talking. We have been calling on the stakeholders, those who are involved in actually amending this document, should look at it and do it, because the penalties are very meager. Other than the imprisonment of 2 years or thereabout, other monetary fines and levies are not really, they are too low
for people.
Yes, for people. But it's still okay. What we are actually relying on is the conviction effect. Definitely when you are convicted, you are convicted. And a convict is a convict. Whether for any offense you are a convict, and we know the implication of being a convict. So that's what we normally, that's what makes people to really try to run away from being prosecuted. Otherwise, if we rely on the amount of money that the law says they should be fined, it's not going to be easy for this department.
Okay, now, what are the cases, you know, that you have? That's, you know, the penalty, you talk about the penalty being too meager for people to be able to pay, and they pay without batting their eyelids.
Yes.
Now, can you give us instances? What offense constitutes, what offense attracts what punishment? So that we know how meager it is. Just a few examples.
Well, like the law says, the penalty in respect of any offense cited by the Act. We have several offenses. Obstruction offense, for you to obstruct a weight and measures officer on duty is an offense which is captured under the law. Short-changing customers by true under-measuring or underweighment of your product is also an offense. Refusal to actually pay the statutory fees in respect of verification of any equipment is also an offense. So likewise, misrepresentation. You have a loaf of bread which is supposed to be 225 grams or thereabout, or multiple of that. You now say it is 250 or 300. You misrepresent, trying to cheat customer, attracting him, telling him that this is what you are selling. Otherwise, and he will innocently buy in that, thinking it is what you said. It is only when the weight and measures officers now take their time to go through the bakeries, go through the supermarkets, and make sure that they cross-check those declared quantities and ensure that they are actually as stipulated and declared. Otherwise, we reject them and they will be off the shelf.
Okay, now when you have misrepresentation and short-changing, which is a common practice in Nigeria here, I go to buy a bag and you tell me this bag is 3,500. So when I price it at 3,000 naira, you brought a bag of 2,000 and you sold to me, thinking it's that of 3,000. What penalties does the law prescribe that should be meted out to that trader selling those products?
Well, I like the example you gave, but we rather do it in terms of quantity,
Okay.
not price.
Okay.
when you go, perhaps, for example, you go for a bag of rice or a bag of cement, which you know definitely is sold at 50 kg. And it is stated on the cover or on the body of the bag that 50 kg. And by the time you come and check, it is 45, 47, or 48. You report it to Weight and Measures Office, they go and use their own standard to cross-check and find it, yes, it is actually 47 or 48. That is issue of short weighment, which is an offense, misrepresentation, which is also an offense, because you have
So you're committed to
two offenses. You understand? So you go for prosecution. We are going to prepare our report and send it to this. It is there very clearly written, and when you go, you cannot, because these are physical quantities that you might not be able to walk, to play with English to get yourself out of it. These are physical quantities. That the interesting aspect of Weight and Measures action. When we take it with full proof and certainty.
You see the program Money Talk, and we are talking weight and measures today. And what we want to establish is to create awareness for people to know their rights, especially when they want to buy things, that entails measurements or which have a certain prescription of how much they weigh, and so they can know that if there is any short changes, they know exactly where to go to, and to help the traders to comply with the enabling laws, establishing these departments. And I've been speaking for the past minutes with Engineer Mohammed Sadasidi. He is the director in charge of weight and measures at the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. Thank you so much for still being on the program. We'll be continuing from here to look at the challenges, other challenges encountered by this department, their prospects for the year, and how they hope to achieve this process, and what should be put in place by the government to ensure that they achieve this prospect. My guest is still in the studio, so we will continue with the other segment of the interview. Now, we would like to know, what other challenges do you face apart from the ones that we've discussed before?
Well, the challenges with weight and measures is almost equal to the scope of weight and measures activities. Like I said earlier, we are expected to be at every point of transaction at any reasonable time to make sure that consumers and buyers of products and services are protected adequately, in the sense that we need to be at the bakeries, we need to be at the cement factories, we need to be at everywhere, even in the hospitals, to make sure that the equipment used to actually measure your blood pressure and other investigation being carried out are properly and effectively verified to ensure that they are giving correct results. Otherwise, all of us are in trouble.
Now, so much has been said about weight and measures, and you can see from the interview so far that it affects almost everybody in the country. You may not be aware of it. You may see it as a meager thing, but it is affecting you in one way or the other, because it's all encompassing and it must cut across you. Now, what do you need to do? You need to be more vigilant. Now, we've been talking about weight and measures, and I'm going to give the engineer in the house just a minute to advise you who is aggrieved or who has been cheated at one point in time or the other on what you need to do. So now, just 1 minute as we round up.
Well, as much as, like I told you, because of the enormity of demand of our services across the country, in all sectors of the Nigerian economy, I cannot boast that we will be everywhere at every time. That's why we encourage citizens in this country to be aware of these provisions, to be aware that there is this establishment, there is this institution that actually is put in place to protect them. they should also be aware that we are in about in 32 states of the federation. We have just gotten approval by the permanent secretary to also start working to establish in the other 5 states that our presence are not there. They should take advantage of that. Any complaint, like you said, we can be reached in the parent secretaries of those states where there is, or otherwise you send to you can reach us. We give you the person in charge of that state, because it is only when you help us. Gone are the days when everybody would sit and get every services to himself. You can request for it if you need it, so that it will give us room. Recently, even the permanent secretary came and complained for some commodity he received, which he believed he was shortchanged. He brought the issue to me. That's my permanent secretary. And I quickly swung into action. Right now, that facility which they use in shortchanging him, we have gone there, prove it, and it is now, in the operation of which is now in suspension. We are investigating the matter. So my advice to people is to come closer to this department, and then my advice of in the government, both at the executive arm of the government and the legislative arm of the government, should come to our aid to make sure that this department is given adequate capacity it requires to really discharge its functions and services.
All right, thank you so much for being part of this program, and that is the size of the program today. When we meet next time again with Engineer Mohammed Sada Sidi, we will be discussing other areas that affect weight and measurement. Thank you so much, Engineer, for being on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's all we have today. Reach us through the numbers displayed on the screen and interact with us on our social media handles. You can also sponsor this program, and we will acknowledge that. We acknowledge sponsorship for the program so that it keeps on running.